in our full day event, digital event, we have Alexander Holmeset. He's from Norway. He's Office Apps and Services MVP. And he's going to talk about also reporting for productivity using APIs. Take it away, Alexander.
I know why you are here today. You are lost, and in today's M365 environment, there is so much information to consume. There is this constant battle to keep your head above water. And then a pandemic hit, and you needed to enable Microsoft Teams for your organization. And to be able to work remotely. And maybe your organization was a good old email workflow place, and you just enabled Exchange Online to be able to connect to the cloud, but we weren't really ready to the rest of the journey. And we were so focused for months helping your end users get into the new way of life. And after a while, when they were into the new daily routine, you got the chance to sit down, relax, and reflect on what had happened in your environment. Then panic hit you, and you realized that you had lost control and didn't have an overview at all. So, should we just take Microsoft Teams and throw it away? And go back to your old habits now that the pandemic is coming to an end? Of course not. Let's figure this out and regain control. I've seen users or organizations with thousands of users that had just enabled Microsoft Teams for their clueless end users, or as I like to call it, uneducated users. And after a week, that resulted in over 2,000 teams, and that's insane. And we had like 4 to 5 teams with the same purpose and documents floating all around. And then you had a problem like starting combining this information together again and what to do with it. And this could be avoided with one simple step, and that's locking down group creation and maybe put up a simple Teams order request form where you go through an approval process. And not necessarily to control your users, but have them stop and think before acting. So after today, this can be you in the next leadership meeting, the one with the overview of your organization. And today we're going to take a closer look at Microsoft Teams in your environment and help you regain your confidence and control. So what kind of reports do you have out of the box? What can you do by combining various sources? And you have, for example, the Microsoft Teams admin portal, but the problem there, you have the data only for the last 90 days. What if I want to take a look at the data and measure adoption year after year? And you can combine data by using PowerShell, Graph API, and even hidden APIs. So let me show you a couple of examples here today on what's possible and what we can do. So here we have the Microsoft Teams, Microsoft 365 productivity score pages. And you get a lot of interesting data here. You have user activity, you have email, Teams, OneDrive statistics, and SharePoint. And as you take a look here, we're going to take a look at the Teams admin portal. You have some statistics at the beginning there, but we're going to take a look at usage reports. So we click into that one, and we can take, for example, a look at app usage. You can see the data for 7, 30, or 90 days. There's a lot of interesting data about your most used applications in Teams. There's a lot of different types. You can see Teams live event, Teams devices, Teams user activity, and so on. So go and click this report and load it up. There's a lot of interesting data. You have number of chat, number of one-to-one conversation, audio time, video time. And I really like to promote video in meetings. I like to have the audio time and video time as close to each other as possible. And you can export this report through Excel. But I like to do it more automatically. How to process the information afterwards and what to do with it. So I like to get it into PowerShell. So the way we can do that is to take a look at the developer mode of your browser. There. And if you take a look at network, and then you run the report again, what can you see there? There's a lot of calls here. If you click into one of these, you see an authentication key. You see there's a GET request and a URL you can use. And this way you can get this report directly into PowerShell and combining with a lot of other sources. And another fun little report I like to run with companies when they start taking advantage of Teams is to take a look at internal email usage. And I don't expect email to go away, but I expect at least internal emails to go way down after the use of Teams. It's a fairly simple script. You get your credential that you need for a SQL database to store the data in. You get an automation connection and use a certificate thumbprint to connect to Exchange Online. And you get all your internal domains. And then you get the messages for the last 24 hours and look for messages where both the sender and the recipient is an internal domain. And then you do a count. A simple report, but an effective one. And another report here is Teams user activity. You have some interesting statistics here. This is a report that you get from the Graph API. But let's see. And if you go to Microsoft Docs pages, you have an overview of all the different API reports that's out of the box there. You have Microsoft Teams, M365, OneDrive, SharePoint, Yammer, and so on. And here you have the report that I showed you in the SQL database just recently. So you see what permissions you need, what kind of requests you need to do, and the URL for it. And what kind of data you can expect from the response. And this data will be downloaded through a CSV file. And I'm no Power BI wizard or data visualization genius, but this report took me 1 minute to create in Power BI. And leaders, they care about facts and numbers. And this way they can get an easy overview of the state of Teams in your organization. And another fun report I created is to take a look at reactions in Teams. So this is for a team in CloudWay. And you see that in the beginning, when we started using Teams, believe it or not, like was the only reaction. And you see that there's a lot of like. And we have the culture to use like to acknowledge a message. But if you take a look at the last 6 months, you see that there's been a lot of love and laughter in this company. This is just fun little statistics. I'm going to show you quickly how these are created. So what you do a graph call and get all teams in your organization, and then you go through every channel in that team, and then you go through every message in that team again, and see a lot of different data there in this object that you get from each message. And then you need to get the reaction or from that message. And you also need to get the replies to that message and also the reaction to the replies. And maybe you can measure how many replies there are to each root message, or how many reactions are there to a message, to measure interactivity in your teams. Another really fun report is out of the box is the SharePoint usage statistics. There's a lot of great data there. And you also have Teams usage. So you see every team in your organization. But what if you combine these two reports? Take a look at Microsoft Teams in a SharePoint perspective. So you see, for example, how many files does this team have, and so on. So I've written a script that combines this by using a Graph API endpoint. So you have directory read all, group read all, and user read all. And the way we do this, we get all your teams, load both these CSV files from those two admin portals, and you loop through all your teams, and you get the SharePoint URL from that team, and that's the way you connect the data from these two reports. You have the SharePoint URL and the team ID. And you can see a lot of interesting data here. We have owners count, members count, active users. When was the last activity in Teams? When was the last activity in SharePoint? And this will take a lot of time. This is an example from a customer. They had like 3,000 teams, so it took almost an hour to run. But I promise you, it's worth to have this report. And management usually love to look at this data. And here you see them combined on one line. It's quite small, so I'll zoom in. You have members count, active users. And here, for example, see in the middle, there's a team that has 11 members, but only 1 active users. Maybe you should take a look at what's going on wrong there. Is this like an information channel, or is it training that's missing? And for example, you have a channel that has 120 reactions and a lot of messages. And then again, you have channels with no reactions, but there are again few messages. And you see how many files there are, how many page visits, and if external sharing is turned on. And another fun place for a lot of data is the Teams CQD Portal. See how many audio streams, video streams, and so on you have. Your daily statistics. This is really fun data. And you see what devices have been used in each call. But what do you want just exactly one data point there, or one detail? Or maybe automate it in some way? Well, in the Graph API, you have something called subscriptions. So you can subscribe to call records. And after every meeting, an incoming webhook takes the call ID, pass it on to, for example, Power Automate, which sends that ID to Azure Automation and gets you the details for that call, and maybe put it into a SQL database. I'm not going to go through that whole process, but I have a blog post exactly about this. And here you see that I've done the incoming webhook call, and you get the call ID. There's a lot of data sessions here. And you can see, for example, who was the organizer, which persons was in the meeting. You see the tenant ID, so you can see if they were external also, so you can keep stats on that. And see a lot of sessions there if they were using audio and video. And you can see even what OS they have. You have Room System, you have Mac OS, iOS, and so on. There's a lot of fun data. And if you remember from the good old Sky for Business server days with call data, you can even go into and take a look at network data. What network did they come from, and were they connected to Wi-Fi? So this was a few short examples of what's possible to do and what data you can get. Now you have the correct tool set and overview to go back to management and show them that you are confident and know this. And you can tell them that user adoption and training matters. And as I said, leaders, they care about facts and numbers. And since we in CloudWay are MVPs and like sharing our knowledge, a lot of these tools are already available on our blogs. And here I have a tool I created based on the Teams admin portal report, but it gets you the data for each department. So you can take a look, is it HR or IT that's most advanced in Teams? Maybe HR is lacking behind, so we give them some training. So what does it look like next year if you take the same report? So thank you for listening to me today, and enjoy the rest of the day.
Thanks a lot, Alexander.
Yep.
And we are talking about like the key takeaway for your session, for our crossword.
Yep.
What's your word?
If I remember it correctly, it was productivity.
Productivity, and why was that?
Productivity matters, and you use the data that you have to see if your users have the correct training, if there's activity in the different teams. If there's low activity, you go in and give them the proper training and find a reason for why there's low activity.
Yeah, I totally agree, and we use a lot of these reports in our projects, especially during the discovery phase and when we are looking at culture, when we're doing assessments. So very useful data right there natively in the platform. You just need to know where to look for it, right?
Yeah. Need to know how to navigate it.
Yeah, and now how to navigate it. Thanks so much.
Okay, thanks.